Hey folks, David Stewart here. Time for Fiction Friday. Fantasy Friday? Fiction Friday. We're going to talk a little bit more about Twilight. This will be the last Twilight video. We'll take a break from that and talk about some other books next week. I want to talk about the plot structure of Twilight and how I think it works very well to get a reader interested in the plight of Bella Swan and also continue on to the end. So this is a technical examination of what's in it, not me like gushing over this particular book because it wasn't really written for my demographic, but I find it interesting to look at it from a technical perspective. So first of all, it starts off with a scene in the middle of things at the climax that you don't understand the context of, and then you have to read through the book to get to that context. This is an old trick. I've mentioned it on previous videos, but that's how it begins. The main body of this work, as far as the plot, which is the event sequence of the book, is broken up into three sections. It's kind of like a 3-act movie or something like that. The first act is really centered around exposition of the characters and setting up the desires of the main character, which is Isabella Swan, or Bella Swan for short. The second chapter is about the matriculation of the relationship between her and her romantic desire, who is Edward. And the third act is a kind of a dangerous turn away from that threatens the relationship and creates some real physical danger and some real tension after the matriculation of the relationship, which must be resolved through a heroic act. This is a type of plot that you might find actually in a regular adult romance book. A lot of them will follow this kind of 3-act structure, so you can use it for any kind of romance story, or you can use it for part of a romance subplot if you're a writer. And if you're just a reader, it's good to know how these things actually function just for your own enjoyment. So the first act, which is mostly about exposition, sets up Bella Swan as the protagonist. It expounds some of her virtues. She is a very feminine character. She cooks and cleans for her father, who's a bachelor. Her parents are divorced. And she has a main flaw, which is that she's clumsy, right? That's her flaw. At the same time, she's also put into a fish out of water situation. So she moves from Arizona to Washington State, where she must make new friends and be in a new social situation. So the first act centers around her making a couple of average friends and then desiring the friendship, or really a relationship, with this aloof character called Edward, who's intensely beautiful, very attractive, very desirable, and also exudes certain qualities that actually come across as desirable and masculine. The aloofness, the high elite status makes him a desirable character, as well as his, I don't want to say emotional distance, but his ability to not be interested in Bella Swan only makes him that much more desirable. The second act really begins with this very sudden event that happens where Bella is almost killed by a truck. So this truck sliding on the ice, or a car sliding on the ice, almost kills her, but she finds herself miraculously saved by none other than her romantic desire, her distant, at this point, romantic desire, Edward Cullen. And from that point on, she begins to uncover the mystery of Edward Cullen, and the second act focuses primarily about learning who he is, figuring out what he is. She learns he's a vampire, and also beginning a relationship with him. So once we begin the relationship with the vampire of Edward, then we have to move on to the third act. So the second act, there's several situations, again, that where Bella is put into a dangerous situation where Edward must save her. She's out in town, and Edward comes by with his car and saves her from some men who are going to assault her after she gets lost. These sorts of things repeat until she ends up basically becoming his girlfriend, when he finally admits to her that why he finds her so interesting. There's a revelation that he's a vampire. He shows her that he sparkles in the sun. And after we have all these revelations, all the tension of the story begins to dissipate. And so it's necessary for this story to have its conclusion to put the relationship in danger. And this happens in the third act through the exposure to a group of traveling vampires. So the Edward, after beginning this relationship with Bella, he introduces her to his vampire family. They explain all the lore of the vampires, their history, which is interesting in and of itself, but doesn't drive the tension forward. They go out to play a vampire baseball game where they hit the baseballs really far. and it's like the sound of cracking thunder. And up shows a couple of vampires, and one of them, because of the nature of vampires each one has like a gift and a nature to them. That's part of the world building that's exposed in the second act. This vampire is a tracker, and so he wants to kill her. That's like his purpose, is to track her down and kill her. So thus begins the third act, where they are running away from the dangerous vampire. They take her back to Arizona. There's a whole set of plans where they're trying to keep her safe. She stops trusting her protectors because she feels that they are going to expose her family. The clever vampire uses a ruse to trick her into a mortal situation, and that's where you end up back in the very first scene that was opening up with the book, is when this tracker finally finds her and is going to drink her blood and kill her, presumably. And of course, she must be saved, as well as the relationship must be saved by the masculine hero, which closes out the book. That's how the plot is organized. That's the way it works. Whenever you're dealing with a romance plot, one of the things you'll typically see is a matriculation of the romance followed by a threatening of the romance. And you'll see this in movies in particular. You could watch Office Space, for instance. So you have the main character. He likes Jennifer Aniston's character. They begin a relationship. He finds out she has a former relationship with Lumbergh, but he's mistaken about who it is. It causes them to have tension and a breakup. His mind goes back to being his normal, fearful self, and then he must repair the relationship. So that's something you see is the relationship begin and then become imperiled. What imperils this relationship, besides the physical danger, which adds to the tension of this, is this idea that Bella carries, which is that if she had never bothered with this, then she wouldn't be in danger, her mother wouldn't be in danger, and of course she views Edward as being in danger of this particular bad guy, even though he shows her at the end that he's not. He's superior and he's stronger and better than him. So all of that kind of works together to produce the plot for this particular book, which is Twilight. In the future, we'll probably look at maybe some of the sequels to see how they function. But by now, you should have unlocked most of the keys to this particular book if you are interested in figuring out how it works. The world building, the character development, and the plot, how all of those work together to hook a young reader. Particularly the demographic that it's directed towards is younger females, and really get them reading and provide an enjoyable experience for them. And really, it's not a bad book from that perspective. If you're comparing it to other books which are intending to deliver radically different experiences, I don't think it's like comparing apples and oranges. Compare this to Interview with the Vampire. Interview with the Vampire is presenting a radically different set of themes and really trying to pique a completely different set of interests than something like Twilight, which is really a young adult romance novel that happens to have some sparkle vampires in it. So thanks so much. I'll see you guys next time. Of course, you can get all of my books on Amazon and elsewhere. Muramasa Blood Drinker. This is the original first edition cover. If you guys like the first edition cover better, by the way, let me know. Seems people like this white and red a lot, and I kind of switched it to a dark cover, but I might go back to that one. Crown of Sight's the newest fantasy book. This is a high fantasy 2-hour read, pretty easy to get through. And then the newest one, Voices of the Void, which is Aliens meets Lovecraft. This is sci-fi horror. People who like sci-fi horror seem to like this book a lot, so check it out. 99 cents, Amazon exclusive or free with Kindle Unlimited for right now, at least for the next 80 something days at this point. So thanks so much, and I'll see you guys next time.